Today on Searching for History, we're at the Ruddell Pioneer Cemetery. Big surprise, searching for histories at another pioneer cemetery. So come with us as we check it out. The Ruddell Pioneer Cemetery was established in 1852. So these 4 bronze plaques were originally on the 1917 era gate, which no longer exists. This bronze plaque reads, "This tablet, contributed by the Washington State Historical Society, commemorates the spot where are buried many of the first settlers of Thurston County, and commends the worthy pioneer who set aside from the acres of his original grant this lot as a free burial plot for his neighbors and their descendants." This plaque reads, "In memory of his ancestors and with a decent regard for the preservation of their last resting place, the undersigned has erected this fence as a barrier between the irreverent few and the revered ground enclosed, and calls upon his posterity and the succeeding generations to respect the bones of the first white inhabitants of this countryside. Gwyn Hicks."
The Ruddell Pioneer Cemetery in Lacey, Washington is significant for its association with events that made a significant contribution to local history. The people buried here illustrate the close interrelationships of some of the earliest Euro-American pioneers in Washington Territory as they settled on the prairies of what is now Lacey. All the early burials were of families living near the Ruddell home or were directly related to Ruddell's extended family. Euro-American settlement in southern Puget Sound started in 1845 when the Simmons Bush Party arrived at Tumwater. By the early 1850s, the number of Euro-Americans had increased to over 1,000 settlers. The Chambers family that settled on the prairie where the cemetery is located arrived in 1847.
The cemetery used to be next to a trail that was established first by the Native Americans and then later used by the Hudson's Bay Company and early settlers. The trail went from Chambers Prairie to Yelm on a branch of what was the Olympia to Nisqually Road. Originally, the cemetery was just yards away from a schoolhouse.
So somewhere out here is the burial site of Eliza Jane Leedom Hicks, the first burial in the cemetery. Apparently, exactly where she was buried, it's not known, but there is a plaque on a marker somewhere around here, but unfortunately, we can't find it. Eliza Jane Leedom Hicks was the stepdaughter-in-law of Stephen D. Ruddell. She died of consumption at the Ruddell home in late 1853, and this cemetery was set aside to accommodate her burial.
And Oliver Beatty planted these large fir trees in this cemetery. He's buried in this cemetery, and we believe that this is his grave marker.
Yeah, so this is an Oliver S. Beatty, born in 1892, died in 1968. Then over here, there's an Oliver G. Beatty, was born in 1916, so we're thinking Oliver G. must be the son of Oliver S. Beatty.
The range of gravestones includes very early signed marble headstones dating from the 1860s, obelisks, bevel markers, zinc ledger markers, flush metal markers, and a few family plot stela markers. Most are hand-carved and mostly made from sandstone. This is a grave marker to Nancy J. Parsons. She was born in 1868 and died in 1918. She was of Cowlitz Nisqually Indian descent. Nancy married John Parsons in 1892. She is known for her skill and artistry in basket weaving.
The original marker doesn't exist, but this is a replacement marker for Stephen Dly Ruddell, a Thurston County pioneer. It says here, his generosity preserved this burial place for pioneer and their posterity. He was a pioneer farmer. He built here his first home in 1852. He was in the legislature in 1853, so this would have been the territorial legislature. He signed the Congressional Memorial creating the Territory of Washington. He was a public officer in 1853, the first territorial assessor and county commissioner, and a soldier in the 1855 to 56 Indian War with the Washington Volunteers. He's a builder of a 200 by 200 foot Ruddell stockade, which sheltered neighbor families during the Indian War of 1855 to 56. Stephen Dly Ruddell and his family came west from Missouri to the Oregon Territory in 1851 and spent the first winter on the Cowlitz River. By the spring of 1852, Ruddell and his large extended family had located to Chambers Prairie. Here, Ruddell built a log house. The property later included a log palisade with log roof and tool house enclosing an area about 200 square feet. The assemblage was known locally as the Ruddell Stockade. Here, several families were housed during the Indian War of 1855 to 56. According to a National Register of Historic Places registration form, the blockhouse was built 40 rods, so 40 rods, away from this cemetery. 1 rod equals 16.5 feet, so 40 rods equals 660 feet. If this is true, is this a different blockhouse than the Chambers blockhouse we already did a video on? Because where that marker is located is actually, a couple miles in that direction, so way beyond 40 rods. There actually may have been more than one blockhouse on Chambers Prairie. Behind me here is the Stephen Ruddell House. It's about 40 rods from the cemetery. Now, if you can imagine, while this house has been heavily renovated over the years, and originally it was a log cabin, this is where the 200 by 200 stockade was built around the house during the 1855 to 1856 Indian War.
Look at this gravestone. It's really unusual. There's an image of a biplane here, and it lists Vivian Adair Ingram Hicks. She was born 1907 and died 1977. She was the mother of our sons, and she was a pioneer aviatrix, which an aviatrix is a female aviator. On this side of the same marker that lists Vivian is a memorial to Gwyn Franklin Hicks, who was born in 1910 and died in 2000. He was a member of the OX-5 Aviation Pioneers Idaho Aviation Hall of Fame, so he was also a pilot. The third side of this grave marker lists Juanita Burke Husk Hicks, who was a co-pilot and CEO. She was born in 1909 and died in 1993, so she was also up in the air.
There are actually several unknown markers here in the cemetery. Like these ones right here.
Look at this. It's a grave to J.H. Manier, wife and 4 children, died 1885. So because this is a wife and mother and her 4 children, and they all died at once, I think it's possible that they all died on their journey on the Oregon Trail to Washington Territory.
So here's the grave marker for Urban East Hicks. He was born in 1831 and died in 1908 and was an Indian Wars captain. Urban East Hicks was a prominent newspaperman and printer and a contemporary of Mark Twain. I read somewhere that he actually knew Mark Twain, and a noted participant in the Indian War of 1855 to 56. Other area families, most notably the William S. and Mary Keyes Parsons family, also buried members at this cemetery. Parsons was a Methodist minister who came west in 1852 and in 1853 took up a claim east of Long Lake. His children married into many of the adjacent families, including the Fleetwoods, Kagies, and Bernards, whose descendants are buried in the cemetery. All the information that we talked about for the cemetery, it came from a National Register of Historic Places registration form for the Ruddell Pioneer Cemetery. So Erin, what do you think about the Ruddell Pioneer Cemetery?
Well, probably the most interesting thing that I found, looking at all these different gravestones and seeing all the families, is it seems like all the families are related.
It's true, it really does. And when you learn about the history of all the families, you start seeing the names, Ruddell and Hicks and other names kind of pop up. I'm a little surprised that right here in Lacey is this little bit of history that I never knew about.
I think the only thing I wish was here that's missing is the informational panels that we've seen at some other pioneer cemeteries.
Yeah, that would be nice, just to explain the history of Lacey and kind of the Euro-American settlement of Chambers Prairie. Well, that was our video on the Ruddell Pioneer Cemetery. I hope you enjoyed it.
Don't forget to like, share, comment on this video, and please subscribe to Searching for History.
Thanks for watching.